Hello, everybody. It's Bill, and I'm live. And if you're catching this later, then welcome to this little talk on the prefrontal cortex and maybe the most pivotal issue when it comes to coaching high school tennis from a neuroscience standpoint is that what we're trying to do is create better decision makers. And it's a big thing. It's a big thing. I mean, a lot of times I think high school coaches can get really too focused in the weeds of wins and losses and the details of people's game, um, technique, training, planning, practice, and all that. But if we pull back and we go big picture, then ultimately the number one outcome that I want to see, and I know many of you as coaches want to see, is somebody who enters in ninth grade and comes in, essentially as a child still, a new adolescent, and probably fresh out of, puberty not too long ago, and have them exit as mature, adults. I mean, of course, they're still going to have, some adolescent traits. And especially if they're going off to college, then they're probably going to have a little more adolescence ahead of them. But we want to develop that maturity, that decision-making ability, in on the court, off the court, in the moments of how to learn how to prepare and strategize and manage time, all of those different things, manage the relationships between player and coach, player to player, player and competitor, those types of things. So Dennis Coates, who I did an interview with, and also I've read his book, highly recommend his book. Off the top of my head, I can't really remember the name of it. But if you look up Dennis Coates, Coates, then you're going to be able to find his book. And the one criticism I have of his book is that it tends to be a little bit repetitive. On the other hand, you can't help but miss how you can't possibly miss his main point, that there's one major window in life for people to develop reflex lessons. So if we look at this, if you look at the structures of the brain in the middle part of the brain there, it's where the threat detection systems are. So, teenagers famously freak out over things that are not necessarily something that they should worry about too much, but they do. And, this is one of the most important parts of, the adult interaction with teenagers, is to help them to understand, help them to modulate their reactions to things, because the system of detecting a threat is very quick, and it goes through, and the response system is very quick as well. But the one thing that helps modulate all that is making connections. So and this can be in many forms. I mean, sometimes the players are intimidated by the coach. And so what do we need to do there? We need to reassure those players that we're not a threat, where we don't really pose a threat to them. So it takes some work to develop that trust. A funny thing happened yesterday, and I've got this brand new team I'm coaching. So the girls were playing their first practice matches and getting ready to play a preseason match tomorrow. That's a whole story in and of itself. But what they were doing is they would be about to serve, and then they would look for me, and then go back to serving, and then of course serve poorly. So so I had to go, you know what? Don't look for me. If you're about to serve, just serve. Because as soon as you look for me and then you see me and then you go, oh, look, there's coach. Now your mind is on something else. And then maybe you go, oh, I wonder what he's thinking. And then, you'd be surprised how little I'm thinking actually. So, um, another thing is that sometimes players project their fear onto the coach. So they're worried that the coach is judging them. And really, it's just them judging themselves. But, it's good to have that talk and say, hey, I don't know what you think, but it looks like every time you see me watching, you get this highly pressurized look on your face. And I'm like, what do you think I'm doing over there? Like writing down all the different ways that you're terrible? Because I'm not doing that. I'm actually writing down what I would like for lunch tomorrow. And that's, it's kind of a joke, but so it's really important to kind of reassure kids, adolescents, nascent adults, and help them to realize that they have to use their brain a different way, and they've got to make better connections that way. So part of what inspires this talk is that yesterday I had a very long heart-to-heart talk with my team where I did all the talking. So I essentially lectured them on all the different ways that they have been showing disrespect to me, to the program, to each other, and how they need to do much better. And not only that, but then I also went through the famous progression: shine, wine, coast, toast. You might want to write that down. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. So shine, wine, coast, toast. And this might be a Jim Lair thing. I'm not sure who came up with this, but I can't remember a lot of these things where they came from originally. But the concept is this: is that you want to shine, right? But you don't want to whine. You don't want to coast, and you don't want to be toast. And I think it was Jim Lair, because he was talking about energy management. So if you have high positive energy, then that's when you're going to shine. But if you have low negative energy, that's when you're going to whine. So you're not really putting energy in, and you're negative, and you're kind of like, do we have to do this? And it just creates this whiny way. Okay. So, and that's my team, mostly my team, very. So I had to call them out on that. I had to point it out and show them that we need to do a different thing. Now, the next one is coasting, because if you have low positive, then, you're positive, but you're taking it easy. And so you're just kind of coasting. You're just kind of, it's easy. Let's just go with the flow. And then, not as many good things happen there. That's a really easy one for kids who have been shining to slip into. They're like, okay, well, I'm up at setting a break, so I'll just take my foot off the gas there for a moment and coast. And then before you know it, that break is gone. And maybe they're even now down a break. And then they're going to shift into something else. They might go, oh man, low energy. Now I'm behind, so now I'm going to go negative. They might whine. Right. So it can shift from one thing to the other. And then finally, it's toast. If you have high negative energy, and I've got a couple of those, kids who pretty much every time they miss, they go through an emotional response, where they're vocalizing negativity. And so if they can pretty much keep it quiet, then everything's great. But, or no, well, at least things aren't toast, but it's more, the more they're going to, the more they're going to, vocalize it, then the more energy they're giving it to it. All right. So I got a comment from Mark Daly. I hope I'm saying that right. Starting early matters. So once they hit high school, they will be the ones to follow. Yeah, absolutely. It's night and day, the difference between kids who enter high school with some competitive experience and especially tournaments where it's lonely. Because then when they're on a team and they're surrounded by friends, it's like, wow, this is great. That the comparison is terrific for them. But yeah, it's a really big difference between the players who do that. But as we know, many kids enter high school and that's when they pick up the sport. And so, I have quite a few girls that are out for this season who I'm teaching them how to play from the very beginning. So, and they're going to go play a match today and we'll see how that goes. But, so, but the Shine Wine Coast Toast thing is a conceptual thing that helps them to understand. I feel frozen. So anyway, I'm going to keep going, even though, oh, look, my counter started up again. All right. So sorry about that. But so having a nice, pithy little rhyming word thing makes it accessible for kids. So, but then it's the explanation behind those things. So now they know they've been given an evaluation that a lot of them are negative, and some of them are high energy negative, and others are low energy negative. And I need the negative, high energy negative people to switch it to positive, and I need the low energy negative people to give more effort. And that takes conscious decision making to make that happen, because for whatever reason, the way they've entered into this team is sort of their default position. This is what they do. They just sort of wind their way through things. And what I hope by the very end of the time that we have together, and it's not long, is that we're going to see a much higher percentage of high positive energy. And this is another thing I think that can be a problem for coaches, is when they have too high of expectations. So they want to see 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds, and boom, and never recede ever. No regressions allowed, or I'll punish you. And then once you start doing that, then you actually create more fear, more resistance, more whining. So it's very important to realize that the kids are going to have to process it. They're going to have to start to manage it themselves. And here's a great example. I had mentioned in a team meeting to the girls that, hey, too many of you girls vocalize negativity after you miss, and I want you to stop. So instead, what I want you to do is turn away from that point, use the decisive stage of the 16-second cure, and take a deep breath. Exhale that point out. It's gone, right? And then move forward and act like you won the point, even if you lost the point. So, yesterday, Shyla, I'll name her. Ooh. So I was watching this practice match, and Shyla missed a shot, and she went, "Oh!" And then I was standing right there, and she's like, "Oh," "I did it." I'm like, "Yeah, you did." So I was like, "Okay, so that's good though, because now you realize what you're doing. So now the next time that happens, then don't listen to that impulse that says to do that." And this is where we go with a little, what's his name? Man's Search for Meaning. Anyway, I forgot the guy's name, but and maybe it'll come to me, but there's this great quote, and it says, "In between stimulus and response, there is a moment. And during that moment, that is when you decide." So you decide what you're going to do. And, people tend to go with what they habitually do. But if you're going to start a new habit, then you have to be conscious of that moment where the stimulus comes and you're like, okay, normally I do this, but now I consciously want to do that. What's up with my hard drive? Do you hear my hard drive chirping? Anybody? Put yes in the comments if you do. Anyway, so now to summarize this, I've kind of given some examples. So the big overarching